if you have a hard time expressing yourself, right? And you don't want to confront somebody or a situation because you don't want to feel stupid or embarrassed. Well, why is this happening? Well, yeah, it reminds me of my mom or my sibling who used to always pick on me and stuff like that. Okay, well, I'm no longer 12. What can I do if I can now focus on this and move forward?
Hey, folks, do you ever get that feeling like no matter what you do, it just never seems to be right? Well, Dr. Philip Agrios from his website, The T Now Method, has some answers, some solutions for us. So sit back in your chair or pay attention to your driving, but listen to this podcast because I think you're going to get a lot of information out of this. Thanks.
Welcome to Amazing People, Amazing Things with your host, Chuck Tuck.
Well, we're talking about self-sabotage, which I'd have to say 99, maybe 99.9% of us have done at least some point in time in our lives. And that's where we were saying that's this mental thing, but it also can manifest itself physically.
Absolutely. So what happened was I used to be a chiropractor and a functional medicine practitioner. So thyroid and autoimmune was my specialty. And all the years of the decades I was practicing, I always, felt that why wasn't I moving to the levels at times, or, I would get there and then I would drop back and forth. Why were my kids going through what they're going through? Why were my patients not doing what I was telling them to do? All these things. And during this whole situation, I was able to uncover a hidden sabotaging trait that we're born with. You can't get rid of it. And we call it the inborn sabotaging trait. It doesn't undermine us, but it actually protects us from the very success that we seek, because that success subconsciously is more painful to achieve or sustain. So we go back doing the same thing over and over again. Because self-sabotage there's nothing wrong with you. You're just in protection. It's a self-protection. And when I first found it, I was like, this is too simple. There's no way. So I went out to try to disprove it because my reputation is very important to me. And researching thousands of people over 30 years, not only was I able to prove it, I found a way to switch it off instantly, and it works 100% of the time. So when you release your personal professional power and you hit that wall, your saboteur kicks in to protect you. Okay? So imagine when you hit that wall, as you start to contract, it's only one trait that's doing that. That's your inborn sabotage trait, the one that's protecting you. And then imagine using what we call the antidote, which is the exact opposite to the trait. You immediately go into growth. So now you're doing this compared to doing that on a conscious level to help shift the subconscious.
So this is not a fear of success, right? This is something totally different.
First of all, there's nothing like this in the world. But so let me give you an analogy. So do you ever see the domino masters, right? They set this whole elaborate thing up and they push this one domino and goes, right? And let's say the last thing that's released are balloons. Okay, what is the last thing you see? The balloons. That's your fear of success, your fear of failure, your imposter syndrome, your anxiety, your perfectionism, not talking, your scatteredness, everything that you see and do last. So what do? We take our coping methods and do what? We put them on the balloons, not the one domino. What's easier, hold down all the balloons and stop pushing the one domino. That one domino is your inborn sabotaging trait that causes every negative emotion that you experience, that causes those balloons to release. So when you push it, you go down the road of frustration and desperation. But when you use the antidote, you then have to go the opposite way. And when you do that, you are then inspired, motivated, and go into growth. 100%, no doubt. And when you use the antidote, it's impossible to self-sabotage yourself. And that's what we prove.
Now, this may sound silly.
No,
I have a question,
nothing's
but
silly.
no question is silly.
That's right.
How is it that we can recognize that we have this situation going on with us as far as the self-sabotage? If a lot of times we can never recognize what is happening directly in front of us, how do we know it?
So that's what we found is that we have, through our programs and other things, we are able to help you find that through a quiz that we do, and we kind of go a little deeper to help you understand this is what it is. So basically, there's only three saboteurs out of 70 billion people. Okay, so what I was able to discover that there are actually three traits that make up who we are. We call them the director, the supplier, and the communicator, because that's all we do as humans. We direct, supply, and communicate. Once I take those three traits and place them what we call a protective sequence, how you protect yourself. So the sequence is made up of three slots. It's made up of your superpower, a bridge between the superpower and your inborn sabotage trait, and they work like a seesaw. Once I know that sequence, there are only now 6 sequences of human behavior, so there's only 6 people in the world. So as I know your sequence, I can tell you everything about you and never meet you. If you have a significant other or a child or anybody else, business partner, whatever, I can ask you a couple of questions about them, never meet them, tell you everything about them, and then tell you how you two interact without ever asking a question. Because we were able to discover how each sequence works with each other, how they conflict with each other, and how they grow with each other.
Wow. This sounds like something where if you, I'm just going to say it again, if you did not know it was happening to you, but it's happening to you, you're going through this, not only would it make every day a difficult time, but holidays would be very stressful.
So here's what's really cool. So holidays, talk about it, they're coming up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in our past, we've had clients that would say, I have a problem with, Uncle Joe or my cousin or, whatever, or my mother-in-law is doing this and this and that. And what was really cool is that we would show them why they would be getting upset based on their sequence. Okay. And then when their situation at the holiday would come up, they would use different sequences. They would actually neutralize themselves. They wouldn't get emotionally charged anymore based on this person because they were using themselves and balancing themselves out first, so the other person couldn't get to them. We've had daughter-in-laws have better relationships with their mother-in-laws without even having a discussion with the mother-in-law. Because as the person changed, as she changed, the mother-in-law on a subconscious level if you had a mother-in-law that was not really nice, their tactics weren't working. So the mother-in-law has two choices: to leave or to change, to stay in the world and have a better relationship. So we've seen that with different relationships during the holiday stress. Then on the other side is that maybe people don't like the holidays because of other past situations. So when they understand this, it helps them to try to find the benefit out of the holiday seasons. Because you have to realize too, your past, people hold on to it because they feel cheated or something was happening to them. And we try to help them to understand that life never happens to you. It happens from you, through you, and for you. And at that moment, when you can see that, and if you can find a benefit in a situation, any adversity in your past, and the benefit is always there, and as well as the detriment, they're on either side. When you can find that benefit, there's no more reason why you can't slowly start letting that go because it benefited you.
With the self-sabotage and stuff, this sounds like it's situational, meaning that it depends on what situation I'm in. Maybe I'm in that holiday situation with a relative, and we've gotten past it. I've gotten past it. I've fixed my self-sabotage on that. But now we're on to something different, and I am struggling. Is that? I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, absolutely.
Is it situational where the self-sabotage is?
Yes, because you have to realize you never get rid of the saboteur. You couldn't if you tried. Plus, it wouldn't be a good idea because it's your protector, right? It's like getting rid of a protection within your body. It's just your protector. So when you have a difficult situation, a resistance, something that's, no matter what it is, you're worrying, you're concerned, and you're out of your flow, you're ready to evolve. Get excited because you're ready to do something different that you on a subconscious level feel uncomfortable with. So we go back and kind of shrink a little bit. But if you realize, okay, I feel uncomfortable, that's fine, right? The question is how long are you going to be there for? So I always, I tell this little story. I say, I don't care. You go into the corner, take your pillow, suck your thumb in a fetal position and cry. I'm good with that, right? That's how you're protecting yourself. But the question is how long are you going to be there for?
Mm-hmm.
So when you do as a business person and you got to get something done and you do something else, okay, that's all right. Are you going to wait a week, 2 months, 5 months? You're not writing your book, you're not getting your course out, things like that. Or are you taking 5 minutes? Are you taking an hour or maybe just a day to get your reset and then come back and actually finish the task? If you're finding that you're overly giving to people and people are taking advantage of you, and when you have that opportunity where you're not setting boundaries, okay, why am I protecting myself at this time? So that's a really good question that your audience can ask themselves. When you feel that resistance, why am I protecting myself at this moment? This is going to be, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Okay, what am I going to do? Well, maybe I can ask my mentor. I can find the situation. I really don't want to do this. Why? And when you focus on how it's a protection, it neutralizes it compared to now there's something wrong with you, or this is hard, or whatever, and you start doing that self-demeaning part. If you have a hard time expressing yourself, right? And you don't want to confront somebody or a situation because you don't want to feel stupid or embarrassed. Well, why is this happening? Well, yeah, it reminds me of my mom or my sibling who used to always pick on me and stuff like that. Okay, well, I'm no longer 12. What can I do if I can now focus on this and move forward and then realize that I need to do these particular techniques that I was taught so that I can move forward with that, right? So again, once you understand why you're in that contracted state, that protection, because there's actually, it can be a contraction, a withdrawal, or now you're overly engaging. You're screaming and yelling at people, you're connecting, you're all over the place. There's two types of protection. There's the withdrawal, and then there's an over-engagement. And we can kind of go back and forth. Sometimes we feel more comfortable with yelling and screaming, and then others are more withdrawal, right? Or you can be both, depending. So what happens is what we find that the antidote, what we call the T now method, T standing for transcend, because when you use that method, you immediately go into a transcending of that particular adversity. And then what it does, it allows you to be balanced out more. So you're not overly gauging, or you're not going into that withdrawal. You're finding a balance so that you can get through whatever adversity is happening for you. And our first goal is for you to realize, what is the benefit out of this? There's always a benefit. I don't care what it is, but there's always a benefit. It may not be what you want, but there's always a benefit in it.
Mm.
Does that help? Does that answer
It
that
does.
question?
It does, and it makes sense now to me on two fronts about stopping to ask yourself, kind of like what's going on and why. And now I also understand where it is an inborn and innate trait, because I was trying to figure out how can this really be inborn, but it is. Now the way you're explaining it, I understand that.
Yeah, and each person has their own, remember, we all have all three in us, but we use one more as a saboteur and we use one more as your superpower. And what we find is the superpower usually trips up your saboteur. So for instance, have you ever had heard of a salesperson that overly talked themselves out of a sale? Did you ever hear about that?
Oh, yes.
Right. So I work with a lot of VPs of sales, and I usually ask them, well, what would you usually do? And the majority of times they would say they would need a communication course. And I said, no, that's their superpower. They're over talking because of their saboteur. So they're scattered, they're all over the place, where they feel they have to overly give, so they now go into action and give too much and now overwhelm the person because themselves of feeling not so valued, or they're scattered, things like that. And as soon as we've seen increase their antidote, their communication becomes so more effective. And we've seen people go from 20 to 30% closing rates to 90% in a couple of weeks because now they fully understand why they felt that they had to overly give or, talk too much or take to action compared to pulling back and understanding what that whole thing situation. So people that overly think, right? They get so much into this box and they think they're always right, which they usually are because they do their homework, but they make these stories in their heads that they don't check, and then that can create a problem too. Then other people's superpower is that their feelings are sensitive. Then it gets in their way of really doing what they need to do. They focus on themselves. They can be self-absorbed because they don't want other people to look at them in a different way. So that can trip it up. So because that's their superpower. That's their go-to. I'm going to use this in this adversity, never knowing that there is this little trait and this antidote. As soon as that comes up, it now allows them to be much more effective. They'll think more effectively. They will act more effectively, and they'll feel differently, and therefore they won't have to feel that they always got to give in that matter. Does that clear that up a little bit?
It does. But for me, it always comes back to that one word of fear or afraid. I'm afraid I'm going to miss out. I'm afraid I'm going to not get the sale. I'm afraid this. I'm afraid that.
Right.
Where I sabotage myself. So if somebody says to themselves, I'm afraid I'm going to miss the sale, so I got to give them all the information I have. I got to give. Is that part of that self-saboteur?
It's always coming down to that one saboteur. I don't care what experience that you have. It always comes down to this one thing for that person. We've done this with thousands of people. It's always this one trait that is the reason why they're having a hard time doing it. See, here's the other thing. The fear is more general. It's like, I feel guilty. Well, that's a secondary emotion to me. It's kind of vague. But when you can find out that for you, this one trait caused the guilt, which can be different for this person that's causing the guilt, which could be different for this person that's causing the guilt. So we would then advise them how to deal with that guilt in different ways, depending on their sequence.
Got it. Okay. Right? You're making it sound so obvious.
I'm telling you, for 30 years, I kept on going, this can't be this simple. Like waiting for someone to disprove this, like, okay, and it doesn't. And, I was just on a show yesterday, and, we sat there, and the two, there was a husband and wife in the group, and they were like, okay, tell us about him. And I told everything about him. I told everything about her. They were kind of blown away. And I said, and this is how you guys interact. And the wife said, do you have a camera in our room, in our house? And that's what we do. And that's how specific it can be. We had a coach that her husband and her were not doing that great. And as she took the course, the relationship grew because she understood hers, but she understood his. But he never knew she was taking the course.
This definitely sounds like it can help you in all facets of life. It doesn't have to be just you directly personal, but in your relationship, and like I said, in business and things like that.
Your health.
So, tell us a little bit about health, because I know that stress causes and can cause physical harm to you.
Absolutely.
So how does this work in this dimension as far as health?
So during the process of this, as I was working with my patients, I would have people come up to me and go, I ate a pizza. And I say, okay. And they would say, I was paying for 4 days. And I was like, cool. I'm glad you were in pain for 4 days. It reinforces what this does to you. But I want to know what triggered you to eat that pizza knowing subconsciously you'd have 4 days of pain. And what we found out was the trigger caused their saboteur to come in to protect them, and therefore they went for their numbing agents, whether it's food, drink, cigarettes, stress, overworking, whatever. And then what we found by the trigger, by using the T-Now method, we were able to find two things. They would lessen their numbing agents or they would stop them. So in autoimmune patients, they have these flare-ups, okay? And so we found that they were not flaring up as much. So I had a lupus patient, and she was doing really well, and she came in and she goes, I'm doing really well, but every time I bicker with my husband, I flare up. I said, well, get him in here and let's talk. got him in. He understood her sequence. She understood his. They understood each other's. And then as they started to understand how to use their antidotes with each other to not allow the conflict to be as intense nor last as long, her flare-ups dropped and she felt much better because now she felt that she was in control of whether or not allowing her husband to get to her or for her to now start on him, right? And then they would both kind of figure that out on that way. And that's what we do consistently. We've helped save marriages, and we've helped, with parent-child relationships, especially with teenagers. It actually works well with teenagers because I've had teenagers. Okay, I have I have two daughters, one in their 30s and the other one in their 20s, and I have four stepchildren and seven grandchildren. So we can see this, and even in young children, you can see what their sequence is, and now you can support them in the way they need to be supported, not in the way you think they need to be supported, which is really how you need to be supported. So imagine helping the child and understanding when they're going through that problem or what to do, seeing tremendous shifts where now the kids are talking. I had a gentleman take my workshop during a business meeting. And he came up to me and says, my son's always upstairs playing video games. We can't get him downstairs to interact with the family. So he understood his sequence. So I asked him a few questions. We ascertained his son's sequence. And within less than a week, his son was downstairs interacting with the family. And their relationship really grew because he realized he was the one pushing his son in the bedroom, pushing his son away because he was making fun of him because that's how he grew up, right? But once he understood that was a backfire and knew exactly how to work with his son, it worked out well. And because your personal life and your professional life are one, right? The saboteur affects both at the same time. So then we helped him look at his business and he realized he was doing the same thing. And as he shifted that, his business grew as well. So your personal and your business are one. When you use your saboteur, both are affected at the exact same time. And when you use the antidote, both are affected immediately as well.
It all becomes more and more clear.
It sounds too good to be true. Like, come on, it can't be this
It
true, right? I'm
does.
from Jersey, all right? Hey, there's no way, right? And yeah, so
Philip Agrios, can you once again let us know where they can go to find out more information and to enlist your services to get some help?
yeah, they can go to what's called the tnowmethod.com. It gives them information of our membership site that they can come in, at a lower price, or we do have for business owners, executives, and sales professionals, we have a more of a higher end type of coaching. Salespeople want to know why they don't close, or the business owners are not wondering why they're not increasing their business or what's going on in their personal life. There's more one-on-one on that as well. But they can always start at the tnowmethod.com or go on to Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I'm there too, and just DM me and we can have a conversation.
Okay. Before we jump off, I want to find out from you, is this something where I get the T now method? I understand it. I understand my situation. Is it going to fix me in 10 minutes, or is it going to, I know we said that we're always the saboteur. It's always with us.
Mm-hmm.
But if I recognize it, can I correct it relatively quickly once I understand it and recognize
Instantly.
Instantly. Okay.
I've had people within an hour, hour and a half, like, oh my God, things are shifting for me. I understand. We've had people, when they come back, let's say in our group coaching, like the first week going, I didn't get anything. I didn't watch the videos. I didn't do what I had to do. It's not that much. And they go, but you know what? I said, but now you understand how the saboteur is really affecting you. And they're like, yes. I said, that's your win. You're seeing it. So are you ready to start shifting it? The question is why are you so protecting? And then we would talk about it like, yeah, we do this, and this is what happened. Okay, cool. I mean, we've had veterans, PTSD veterans, take the course and see shifts. We had one that he was going to have two major episodes that week, and he used the T-Now method, and he was able to offset it. We had another one take it and give it to his therapist. And within 3 to 4 weeks, they had tremendous breakthroughs. So it works in so many different ways because it's just coming down to one thing for the rest of your life. It's different than disc and all the other ones because you don't have to take them a couple of, times a year because it changes. This is what you're born with, and you only have to focus on this one trait, and then that domino effect takes place. So yes, when you have that difficult, is there times when you can't, even though you have it, you can't get through it? Yeah, depends on how emotional it is, how much of a hole you put yourself into, right? But at least you know this is the thing that can shift me immediately. You got to realize when you evolve, you dissolve. They both happen at the exact same time. I cannot evolve something without dissolution, right? Right? When things are falling apart, they're also falling together at the same time. It depends on what side you want to look at. So when you use your saboteur, you're not in balance. You're just protecting yourself. You're trying to see what's going on, or you're moving so fast because you're trying to offset that, you're over engaging or you're not that way. But when you use the antidote, you must go into balance. So another analogy I give is that if you had anxiety, people with anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm.
You hear people go, come on, it can't be that bad. Stop the anxiety. Come on, just, have a drink or let's go play, right? People with anxiety are like, you have no clue. Well, what's happening in their brain, excitatory chemicals are kicking in, right? So what do? Do you take them out, which is uncomfortable, you can't do that. Or do you increase the calming brain chemicals, because you cannot have calming brain chemicals and excitatory brain chemicals at the same time. They do this, and that's what sparked me to understand how that sequence works. So when you increase your calming brain chemicals, what happens? Things calm down a bit. And by the way, anxiety is just a protection. Okay, it's just your saboteur protecting you, right? So that's why when you use the antidote, things calm down in a more balanced way, or they'll increase. If you're kind of like disconnecting from people, it'll allow you to start connecting to people. If you're overly and screaming and yelling, it'll allow you to calm down a bit. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at, and that's what the discovery. And that's why there's nothing like this in the world. I always joke, I go, if you want to learn something totally new, we have it. So there's nothing like this.
Well, I was going to use a word that I haven't used in any of my shows. This is fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
This is fascinating. That, and once again, you make it really clear and easy to understand that I am a saboteur, and I need that T now method to understand and make these changes. So this is going to be, I think, very beneficial for everybody, like we were saying earlier, in any facet of their life. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that I found in my past was, I took all the greats. I took Robbins and Rowe and Zig and all the greats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, what's wrong with me? Why is this not working? And what I found was all that information, though brilliant, is general. It's not specific to me. I now have to figure out how to be specific to me, right? Well, what I found was that general information, I was subconsciously focusing on my superpower and my mediator trait, the bridge, not the antidote. But once in a while, it would hit the antidote. I would become successful, but because I didn't know how I got success, I would then lose it because I couldn't sustain it because I didn't know. So what we do is we have coaches and, all brilliant people take this course. And I said, it's not that you're stupid, whatever the case, you're just too close to it. So once you understand this, then you take your brilliance and then put it on the antidote. And that's where things change. So we kind of give them a basis of that so that, again, now you take all this great information that you were taught and then place it on the antidote. And the antidote, what we show you, is repeatable success.
Well said, and thank you very much. It's I think just with the information that you've given us today, people are going to be able to recognize certain things, but they're still going to need that help. So hopefully they go to your site and do what they need, because I definitely see where this is of benefit.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and that's what the membership, if they join the membership, they take a little course to get their inborn sabotage and trait and antidote. Mm-hmm. They kind of learn the lingo, and then they're allowed into the membership. because the worst thing could be is go into a membership and have no idea what a director saboteur is or what the protective sequence is, right? You need a little bit of background. And then from there, they can start seeing it and then having help. And, it's a consistently of giving information that's specific to their antidote and how it affects their professional life, their health, and their relationships.
There you go, folks. It's those are very important things. Those three right there.
Yes. Yes.
So, thank you very much for the information. I've learned quite a bit.
Oh, great.
So,
Well, I'm glad. I hope this was valuable for you and your audience. And I'm honored to be here. And thank you so much for this opportunity to tell people what we have for them, if it's for them.